Dear Charles Leclerc, it's time.
Oh, God. Welcome, everybody, to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast.
Welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast. Now here's a bald guy and some Indian.
I'm some Indian. This is some bald guy. How are you, man?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm happy. I'm happy because I did not expect the race to be this good. But yeah, it was a massive surprise for me.
Yeah.
I went into the race weekend thinking that, okay, it's going to be a bit of a dud.
Yeah.
I went into the triple header thinking it was going to be a bit of a dud, honestly, because it's Imola, Monaco, and which one is it?
Spain.
Barcelona.
Yeah.
So Barcelona might be fine, but I didn't expect much from either Imola or Monaco.
Yeah.
Pleasantly surprised.
It'll be interesting to see if Monaco holds up. I guess we'll talk about that later because there's a new rule change and whatnot. And then Spain, we've got a TD that I think at this point is not going to do anything, but we'll see.
It's fun. Either way, it's fun because at least there are things to talk about and things to look forward to. There are a lot of things going on.
It seems like Red Bull have actually done something, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, they do a lot of things. They don't get credit for it because...
Because everyone just thinks that the Red Bull's actually a Haas that Max is driving to the front, which is...
No. Sauber.
Yeah. Sauber. Yeah.
Don't you try and diminish what Max is doing, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I still think... I guess we'll just jump straight into this. I still think McLaren have the fastest car overall. However,
of course.
It is a fact now, though, that the Red Bull was actually the marginally faster car this weekend, which is insane.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, the biggest thing was that the tire deck, they've done it.
Yeah. In terms of speed, I wasn't overly surprised because unlike a lot of people, what I've seen is the Red Bull at some weekends is almost on par with the McLaren to the point where the McLaren is not that far ahead. We saw this at Suzuka. Suzuka's got those fast flowing corners. So we assumed the Red Bull would be, because of those fast flowing corners, relatively close this weekend. But the tire deg, as you said, that is the big thing because it was very hot and we all assumed that McLaren would just get away. But it seems like with these upgrades, they've kind of
not only it being very hot, but also being a high deg race. This was a race which was basically degradation was one of the factors that actually determined how the race went. Yeah. And one thing that stood out for me was, so for me, the expectation was, okay, Oscar, probably the biggest litmus test when it comes to Red Bull and its upgrades, it was the moment Oscar pitted. And you had Max and Lando pretty much in a straight head-to-head. Ideally, you can say a lot of things about Lando, but when it comes to showing what the car can do in a race, I think he's a decent benchmark. The gap was around 10 seconds when Oscar jumped into the pits between Max and Lando.
Yeah.
It didn't fluctuate much. Maybe a second at max, but that's it.
If anyone wants to, you can bash on Lando for a few things. It's the high pressure moments where Lando seems to constantly fall apart. Yeah. But when you look at his just race pace is not one of those situations. So race pace is just you get into a rhythm, and Lando is very, very, very fast. Every single time where Max has been ahead, Lando has been catching him, and it's those, in Suzuka, it was the dirty air, and we even saw Oscar behind him, couldn't do anything with the dirty air. In Miami, Lando was catching Oscar as the thing went on, as the stint went on. So, but if we look at the tire wear, for me, it was before the safety car, not the virtual safety car, the safety car. Lando was he was 18 seconds behind, and over the course of 8 laps, he caught from, I think, 20 seconds down to 18, I think it was, or 18.5.
Yeah, something.
So talking a second and a half over 8-9 laps, it was nothing. It was a couple of tenths here and there.
And Max was managing as well. It wasn't that he was just going hell for leather or something like that.
Oh, and even at points, it went back up, it came down, it went back up. So that tells you he was managing. So yeah, look, I think when we get to tracks where there's more traction zones, where it's more rear limited, we're going to see the McLaren still have the edge. I think that's where the difficulty is.
It is rear limited, right?
No, it's more front limited, I think. No, because there's less traction zones. It's more high speed.
Yeah, of course, it is high speed, but
It's close.
I'd say
It's
it was a
somewhere in the.
decent test. I mean,
Mhm.
I'd say it was still a decent test for even if we take that into consideration, because
It's not as bad as Bahrain. Let's put it that way. Like Bahrain has a
yeah,
lot of
Bahrain is
traction
basically
zones.
the Bahrain, and to a certain
Yeah,
extent even Miami. Those
they
are
are
your
very
tracks
real.
where
Yeah, very
exactly.
rear limited. Yeah, yeah,
So look, why Red Bull, why Max sneaked into yeah, why Max was as competitive in qualifying and still I'd say relatively competitive in the race. It comes down to Red Bull's proficiency in the fast speed sections, and again it was the first sector where he just nailed it. There's still something that the Red Bull leaves on the table in the second, third sector, which was something that I feared as well, because McLaren tends to have a better ability when it comes to keeping a hold of its tires.
yeah,
Plus, the traction zones and the slow speed sections is where McLaren tends to succeed.
yeah.
That's what it just balanced out to a large extent. But yeah,
One thing I would say on that I noticed is I do think that perhaps there is a situation where in qualifying, Max put a lot more through the tires in the first section
yeah.
because he knew that's where the advantage was. And maybe that is the case of not having full faith in the upgrades because it seemed like in the race then he wasn't doing that. Like it did seem to
He was
calm down. And
surprised. He didn't
yeah.
expect to win or have that kind of
So
pace, and
I think he put a lot of power through the tires in the first sector,
I
thinking
think he messed up.
that's where the
I
advantage
think
is.
it's Oscar being just look in the very first sector. Oscar improved by 3 tenths
Mm-hmm.
in on that final run. Max
Okay.
improved
Yeah.
by a couple of tenths.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire advantage that Max had was in the first sector. So Oscar
Yeah.
nailed his, at least for himself, nailed his perfect first sector, and that set it up for him.
Yeah.
Max
Yeah.
had a purple sector one. He was a couple of tenths up on his benchmark, but then S2 and S3 were slower because the car just couldn't handle it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Oscar was able to manage it. So again, kudos to Oscar because that was a brilliant lap. That's why I kind of said that. And again, even if Oscar finished behind Max and Lando in the race, I think I think Oscar has pulled away from Lando in terms of the driver who I'd expect to have not only the ability to nail the crunch moments, but also pull out special laps, because that was a special lap with which he
Yep.
beat Max.
He just seems far more comfortable now with everything, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's maybe some of the upper limitations of the car don't suit Lando's driving style. Like who knows, to be honest, because you're talking about literally the last. Like it's not like there's miles between them, but you're talking about the last tenth or two.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to be properly comfortable with the car. Like we see this with even like Yuki, for example. I know this weekend's not a great example, but like we see Yuki, for example, Q1, Q2, he's kind of in and around, kind of a couple of tenths of Max. And then it's like when you get to that last, like, okay, we need to get into the last kind of tenth or two of the car,
Yeah.
Yuki just falls apart. And that we see that all the time in qualifying. We saw it last year with Hamilton against Russell as well. Like Hamilton just couldn't access that kind of last upper element of the car. And yet in the races, he was very quick. Kind of similar thing with Lando now. And that a lot of that shows like he's just not comfortable. He's not gelling with this car.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Lando, when Lando gets flustered, it seems everything just goes wrong. Like we talked about, his mental
Lows
issues
are
is the
just
wrong
too
word.
low.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas
That's the
Oscar
biggest problem.
just kind of gets over it and moves on.
The
And
best
so
example, something that I liked about Oscar was when the race ended, he walked up to Max and shook his hand. It was an acknowledgement of, okay, yeah, by the way, we'll also talk about the overtake,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it
yeah,
was it was the acknowledgement of, yeah, you got me there,
yeah.
and that's fine.
Oscar wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but the biggest contrast is if it was Lando who actually had that happen to him, he would have been depressed.
yeah, yeah,
Right. He would have taken it a bit
yeah.
too harshly on himself. And I think that's where there's a difference between Lando and Oscar, because what Oscar can do is he compartmentalizes and understands that there will be moments where basically he lose. There will be moments where Max would get him. While Lando has the kind of expectation that every moment he has to win and he has to be perfect. And that's just not how racing works.
Hey, just a quick interruption because we have a problem here, which is that for the last few months, we've been saying that if you're offended, subscribe. We've kind of been saying that. We've been saying if you're not offended, don't subscribe. It's the same thing. I'm sure you understand English if you're watching this, so you've got it, I'm sure. But turns out 60% of you have not been offended. And I just can't sleep. I don't know about you, Casual, but I just can't sleep at night knowing that we haven't offended 60% of the audience. I think we need to start. You sleep okay? Well, I haven't, because there are 7.5% of you are Indians that haven't been offended. For example, I think we just need to fix this. So I'm just going to take a minute of your time to just make sure that everyone watching this is thoroughly offended. So I've written down a couple of things, Casual, and you can tell me if you think this is offensive enough. So let's offend those Hindus and Indians first, quickly.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Oh, Jesus, no, don't. Don't do that.
Is that too offensive? No? Okay.
You don't live in India.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Hindu.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that offensive? So that is offensive then?
That's not only offensive, that's going to get me lynched. So please don't do that.
All right. Well, I'll think about cutting it out afterwards. Is there... By the way, 15% of you watching are British, and I'd just like to say that your sports cars now are so gay that the best selling model is the LGBTGT. No? Offensive? No?
Maybe.
And of course, the 20% of Americans here, there's no need to insult you because you'll just do what you always do, which is show up after everyone else has done the hard work. So we'll probably cut that Hindu joke out, should we?
Yes.
Yeah? What I'll do is...
I'm still too young to die.
Okay. So... If you have been offended, please subscribe. If you haven't, then tell us how we can offend you and we'll subscribe you. And if a lot of Indian people subscribe, we'll maybe show you a behind the scenes of what that joke was at some point. Thank you, everybody. Now back to the podcast.
I think, just coming back to it, for me, okay, before anything else, I think a lot of people would be actually angry in the comments that we've still not mentioned the overtake. So let's talk about it. What's your take on that one?
Incredible move, like classic Max as well, to even surprise Oscar and surprise himself, according to Max too. Like, it's just one of these things where if you leave any space whatsoever for Max Verstappen, sometimes you don't even have to leave space, let's be honest. But, if you leave any sort of opportunity for Max, he's going to take it. And to be fair, like, to surprise Oscar Piastri in that respect is not easy as well, because Oscar is also that type of kind of aggressive driver. I think a couple of factors here were in on this. I think one, like, obviously, all praise to Max for it. It was spectacular. I think he just saw the opportunity because it was clear that Oscar was taken off guard a little bit by Russell, I think. I think he thought, right, I've gotten a better run from Max, so I now have to cover off Russell, who's coming up behind, so I can't, move over to the right. I think if Russell hadn't have been there, he was kind of going to close it off maybe to the other side or maybe he just thought, look, I've got the inside covered. It's too hard to lunge around the outside with these rules. And he was clearly taken off guard. And then I also think as well, Oscar, just once that happened, is like, well, I can't force him off now because, one, he's earned the space, but even if he does, it's like, Max is coming from behind. So he probably thinks like, oh, Max can't take as many risks as I can. I think it's interesting. I think it's going to play out differently as we go forward. I think Oscar is very much one to learn from these very quickly. So I think... it's going to be interesting to see these two go head to head, but it was a brilliant move from Max. I wonder too, when he saw Max come around the outside, was he less aggressive? Because in an interview before the race, Oscar basically said he's not that worried about turn one because he said basically he thinks we'll have the tire wear to kind of fight them back. So I'm not too worried about the opening stint, like it's going to be a long race. And that maybe was ingrained in his head as well. And that's why he wasn't as aggressive. I think if he knew the tire wear wasn't there, I think he probably wouldn't have given any space on coming into turn two and would have probably ran him out the whole way. So I think it's a confluence of factors, but it's just another example of just fucking Max just doesn't give an inch, and it's fantastic, spectacular racing, And for anyone who says what I diss Verstappen fans about is Red Bull have built a brilliant car. That doesn't take away from the fact of how good of a racer and how brilliantly he extracts every inch of that car.
Yeah.
Another spectacular
No,
move.
it's just the kind of magic that Max brings, right? I mean, there are moments just every race and every time, and the frequency with which he can produce these moments, it's so rare. There aren't many drivers on the F1 grid that can do that this often, but he does. He does it every time he gets an opportunity, and it's like I understand. I think the door opened for him, and he had not expected it to open. I think probably it was down to the fact that George had the best start out of the top three.
Yeah.
It seemed obvious that, and once that happened, Oscar thought, okay, I have Max covered, and then on this side I have George, and Oscar wasn't giving an inch at all. The three were just boxed together.
Yeah.
And from that point, it was his entire focus was behind, and the door just opened for Max. I don't think he even had time to react or anything about Max.
No.
But just this way and just gone.
Oscar was asked afterwards, what would you do differently if we started again? And he said break 10 minutes later or something. Because, realistically, I think it was just brilliant by Max. You could tell it because took Oscar just completely off guard. Because realistically, if Oscar had been focused on what Max was doing there, he would have just braked later, and then Max couldn't go around the outside because this isn't like a runoff area where you can self-forced off. You're in the gravel, you're gone. So I think, it was a ballsy move as well by Max, because if Oscar had have seen it and had the time to react and let off the brakes there, that would have been an all or nothing move as well. But it was just brilliant.
And I think that's where probably Oscar was at a back foot, because he cannot afford a DNF.
No. Well,
Max doesn't care. Yeah, he cannot. He was 60.
Maybe,
If Oscar and Max, they both of them just DNF, you have Lando winning the race. More or less, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
The point, though, is I think Oscar, if he had seen that, he could have. That's the brilliance of it, because obviously Oscar just didn't see it, and nobody saw it. It was just a brilliant move.
Nobody. But, it's like when Max sent it down around the outside, is he going to make it? And it was precision, that there's no room for error, nothing, and he just nailed it perfectly.
The thing is, if Oscar had seen it, Oscar had enough. Oscar was in the perfect position to push him off and still make the corner. So I think, if he had a break, he just didn't. That's why it was such a. This is just, the thing about Max that is brilliant is just goes back to what Clarkson said about Senna. I think that's what makes Max, for me, a better driver than Hamilton. Or because I always say greatest driver since Schumacher. People are, what about Lewis Hamilton? I'm like, what about Vettel? I mean, there's tons of examples. But what Clarkson said about Senna just translates here, which is, Vettel was brilliant so many times, for example. Lewis has been brilliant so many times. But like Senna, Verstappen is brilliant every time. And that's what makes him spectacular. Schumacher was the same. Just, Schumacher and Senna, every time they were on track, you knew it was spectacular. You knew nothing was being left on the table. And that's the thing with Max. And it goes back to, again, why Red Bull deserve credit, because Red Bull are giving him a car that he can extract the limit from every single time. And Max deserves credit because he extracts the fucking limit every time.
Out of it, yeah.
He doesn't leave anything on the table. And to do that every weekend, it's literally easier to list the weekends where he doesn't do that because there are so few.
There aren't any.
There's the only one that jumps to mind recently is Hungary last year. Jeddah, where he messed up the start. Well, he didn't understand the rules had changed somehow. But yeah.
By the way, he would not have done the same trick here.
No way. No.
The Jeddah trick. He wouldn't have done it here because look again,
gravel.
The answer to every problem in Formula One is gravel. And they just don't get it. It's Anyways, thoughts on thoughts on Oscar's strategy?
I just Oscar the entire way through, I thought actually was quite good. I just think that once that happened, well, look, this is one thing we talked about Lando and Oscar earlier. Oscar, after that moment, just got his head down and continued racing and just kind of tried to stay with Max, I think, as much as he could. Max pulled away, and I think Oscar was basically just banking on the fact that, okay, well, look, there's no point like ruining my tires trying to catch him because his tires are going to fall off. I think McLaren and Oscar were both taken by surprise of how effective the Red Bull was with its tires. Red Bull, frankly, were taken by surprise with how effective they were by the tires. So, look, I think they just were playing a race in a situation where they didn't understand the upgrades had worked, you know. So I just think there was nothing they could do there. And look, as soon as Max probably realized his tires weren't going off, that was it. I think there was just no way of, you know.
I think it would have worked for Oscar. I think the whole thing just turned on its head when Leclerc was just he kind of triggered the undercut, right? Very, very early. I think it was P7 or P8, and he just jumped into the pits.
Yeah, and then the VSC ruined everything for them as well. So.
We'll get to that later because I have been venting about that a lot.
I've seen a lot of people vent about that. It's a reasonable explanation.
No, but that should have been a safety car, but how it fucked Leclerc over because that was hilarious. And
Alonso.
Everyone
said he was the unluckiest fucking driver in F1
in the world.
He may have a point there as well, but So he causes a lot of his own bad luck, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. So it was Leclerc who just pitted early, and once he was in free air, I think that also caught a lot of people off guard because Ferrari was flying when in free air, and Leclerc, I think he ticked off almost every driver until Russell, where Russell was, I think, P4 at the time. Everyone was undercut, and then when Leclerc became perilously close to reaching a point where he would jump even Lando and Oscar. That was the time when McLaren pitted Oscar because they thought that they can replicate what Leclerc had done.
Mm-hmm.
That was the aim. But there was one major issue with that, and the issue was the fact that when Leclerc jumped into the pits, there was around 15-20 seconds of free air where he could have very basically exploited everything and made up positions. When Oscar jumped in, he had a 5-second or 6-second gap in front. You don't do that in Imola, and I think that screwed his race. Where what Max and Lando did, they extended their first stint, and Oscar was just systematically, again, he did what he could do in terms of making his way through the field, but the gap remained the same. And that kind of screwed things up for him. And then again, the VSC, the safety car, that made it worse. To be honest,
the VSC kind of if we hadn't got that second safety car, like Max would have won that race by like 35 seconds or something. The gap was 30.
Bonkers.
No, it was 18 seconds to Lando, right?
Yeah, 18 seconds.
He would have just won the race by 20 odd seconds.
18 seconds.
I mean, that for me showed that Red Bull had fixed the tire issues as well, because like I said, Lando just wasn't making any inroads on it at all. It was just
none,
you know.
And it's just once you see that, you're like, okay, then if you can't catch up, then the race is over. That's it.
That's the feeling I had. I was like, oh, well, this race is done. So I just switched my focus to like, oh, what's going on in the rest of the grid? Oh, look,
there's always Ferrari, right?
Falling apart. There's
always Ferrari. By the way, just putting a pin on it. The entire title battle. Now, what's your view on where do you think the title battle is going now?
This is going to be a really interesting one because, look, the thing now is that basically we're in a situation where, again, sorry, Verstappen fans, but Red Bull is so close to McLaren now in terms of performance, because the biggest issue was tire degradation, right? Because, like, if Max,
Max
obviously
has had 3 poles this season out of 7 races.
The Red Bull has been within 2 or 3 tenths at most races, apart from the outliers for Red Bull, which is like Bahrain, for example.
Bahrain and Miami.
Miami obviously was a situation where that wasn't actually down to pace, because in terms of just regular pace, in terms of just pace between the two cars, there wasn't a huge difference until the race, at which point the tires fell off for the Red Bull, and for the McLaren, they just didn't. And it seems like at this race, Red Bull have fixed that issue with the aero. I think it'll still be an issue at certain tracks. But I think it's going to be a situation where we are going to have that lovely situation where I've said situation too much, things are going to go back and forth between different track characteristics, basically. So at certain tracks, the McLaren will just be miles ahead, and at certain tracks, the Red Bull, maybe, because it's all low-speed traction zones. So
Monaco will be miles ahead. McLaren will be miles ahead of Red Bull at Monaco. Maybe it might have challenge from Ferrari and Mercedes to a certain extent.
So I think, but I think that's the thing is like it's not going to be an easy championship for McLaren because I think there's going to be tracks where they'll be miles ahead of Red Bull, but even at those tracks, they're going to, like you said, have Mercedes or Ferrari kind of be in and around, maybe even a Williams at some point. Who fucking knows at this stage? The point is, it's like
Jimmy consonants we trust.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the point is, this isn't like a 2023 Red Bull or a 2014 McLaren or Mercedes, sorry.
2014, 15, 16.
This feels to me like a 2007, where you've got, in some ways, where you've got two very fast McLarens, but they're going to take points off each other. I think to a lesser extent, it does seem like...
I'd say it's because in that case, there were days where Ferrari was untouchable.
Yeah.
We don't have any
less
of that
so
here.
In that respect, but I think it is
I'd
a
say
case
1984. I'm going 40 years back. 49.
Okay.
The 1986 McLaren versus the Williams, where Prost
Rosberg or Prost?
Prost won by beating Mansell and Piquet.
Okay. Was Rosberg 82?
Yeah,
I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
80 is Jones, 81 is Piquet, 82 is I think 82 is...
Peter Brook podcast is available. So let's not go there.
We should have him on as it's been a while.
Definitely.
He loves triggering a lot of people, by the
way. What I mean by that though is I think in terms of just the consistent person in the championship could be Max, where he'll just kind of be in and around taking his weekends where he gets them, like this weekend. And I think that's what could screw it up because Lando is nowhere compared to Oscar at the minute. Well, I say no. What I meant to say is Lando is not miles off Oscar to the point where all it will take is a couple of weekends. Like this weekend, for example, like Lando not being there, Oscar gains a few more points on Max, 2 or 3 more points.
Yeah.
So those points add up in a close season like this, and there's only 20 points now, 22 points between Max and...
Between Oscar and Lando is 13. Between Oscar and Max, it is 22. So it's
So I mean,
one McLaren double DNF and we are golden.
Yeah. So I think this title fight is it's still way too close to call, which is interesting.
Also one big factor, and I think we are all sleeping on it.
Russell.
Yeah, you might laugh at this one, but I think if Ferrari fixes its qualifying, I think Ferrari might. I know, but I think if Ferrari
they're not going to win the championship, but you're saying they might influence it.
Leclerc might become a major factor because that car was. If you take the tire life into consideration, I think Leclerc was at par with Max and.
In the race, that car was blazingly quick.
Yeah.
But to quote Lewis Hamilton, who said something similar to what he said in Las Vegas last year, if we had qualified better, we could have run that race. Yes, Lewis. Well, then fucking qualify better.
I mean, great segue. Let's talk about Ferrari then.
Should we not talk about something less controversial, like VSCs and safety cars?
Just to touch on it, because a lot of people had doubts on it. Why the first was VSC and the second was a safety car? You go ahead.
Well, this was one of those situations, wasn't it, where it's like, in the moment, even I, as a reasonable person who looks for there must be some sort of, I know the FIA is horribly incompetent, but I'm like, they're not generally as biased as everyone thinks. They're normally just idiots. So even during that, I was like, oh, this one's going to cause a fucking nightmare now, because it just looks like you're going, this race is too far apart. So we better call a safety car instead of a VSC, because that's the only way to spice this up. That is what it looked like. Even Alex Jakes on the commentary was like, this is interesting. Everyone, I knew what Twitter was going to be like, and it delivered exactly as it should have. But there was a reasonable explanation for this. I thought initially that likelihood was that basically they couldn't move Kimi's car. That's what I assumed was the reason, because that would make sense. And as soon as you have to bring a crane or some sort of machinery on track, it has to be a safety car. Basically, that's just the way they run things. In this case, it was, from what I understand, the issue is that they were able to roll back, was it Ocon's car? Yeah. they were able to roll it back into a space and not have to bring out any machinery. Unfortunately, where he broke down, where Kimi broke down, was in the exact same location, which is obviously what causes conspiracies. But unfortunately, they then couldn't move that car back because the space they could put it into was already occupied by Ocon's car. Therefore, they need to move the Kimi's car to a different location. Therefore, they have to bring out machinery. And as soon as there's machinery on track, you have to bring out a safety car because of what happened a few years ago. So they're pretty adamant about that. And if they don't do that, then people start screaming like they did at Japan a couple of years ago where they had it out on track. People will scream either way. But yeah, there is a logical reason for it. Essentially, Ocon's car was already in the space where they could have pushed it back to. So they had to bring out a crane. Therefore, it had to be a full safety car. So yeah, there is no conspiracy there, unfortunately.
So again, for me, the biggest issue that I felt was the fact that, look, if there is a VSC, I don't mind it being there for at max a couple of laps. But I prefer, if we are going to have a virtual safety car, it should not be beyond 2 laps. If it is taking more than 2 laps, I would prefer a safety car because, look, that it eats into the laps. One thing is that. Secondly, it's just your. What's the point?
So how
My
long
worry
did the
is that
VSC go for?
it went for a few laps. I think it went for 4 or 5 laps, and that's something that was
because
a
the
bit.
safety car was 6 or 7, right? Safety car took ages as well.
Safety car took ages.
Yeah.
I think it was more than that. It was even more than 6 to 7 laps. Because again, it was because the recovery vehicle took time and everything.
Yeah,
But that
yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
It's the thing is, if you've followed the entire weekend, then the FI was being a bit wonky throughout the race weekend. Cause
What's
in
fucking
the
real?
in the in the Formula 2 race, a car was parked just at the side of the track, and they just had a yellow flag, and they kept going. There was no safety car, no virtual safety car, nothing. They just went on with the action, and that was utterly dangerous. And even the commentator spoke about it. But that's why it got a bit weird for me, because initially, again, I can understand the premise behind it. The premise
Yeah.
was that you needed a recovery vehicle, but I'd always suggest that if you're going to take 4 or 5 laps, it's better just to bring out the safety car, neutralize everything, and then the number of laps should not be lost, ideally.
They're just the problem is, I think it's like the overtaking as well. They're just making everything too procedural, and I think that's like part of that. I get the reasoning is they're trying to make it consistent because everyone's arguing about consistency.
Yeah.
And I think in this situation, it was like, okay, well, let's just be procedural. We don't need a vehicles on track, therefore it's a VSC. But yeah, you're right. Like there should be some common sense there of, okay, we don't need vehicles on track, but how long is this going to take? Because if it's going to take 5 or 6 laps, then that's just going to cause chaos and it's going to look stupid. So let's just, maybe they just didn't know. I guess, look, it is, as much as I like to bash on the FIA, I guess it could also be a situation of in the moment, but it makes sense though.
It wasn't egregious or any such thing.
It just could have been held better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ferrari. So
Yeah.
Oh god. Okay, Charles Leclerc. I mean, it's about time. Just okay. I'll say one thing. I think what it might be a bit of a bold prediction or something, but I think we are heading towards a scenario where the relationship is about to end. I think Leclerc's patience has kind of run out. I think in every race weekend you see things just being. He realizes that this season was the one where he should be challenging for the title, and the comments that Fred Visser continues to make in the media, they are bereft of reality. I think that there's if there is X happening and Fred Visser claims Y, yeah, what are we doing? And it's Fred Visser. It's not Mattia Binotto, who I didn't rate that highly, and Visser is someone who I did.
Yeah.
So that makes me a bit. Anyways, leave that aside. It was just the final comment that Leclerc made when he was questioned that do you have faith in the team, and he specifically mentioned one thing: I've been here for 7 years. So do I have faith in the team? Of course, I have faith in the team, but it was a bit more of a, you can say, self introspection. The way he kind of dealt with it, it's Look, if the team does not improve, I think we are going to see a scenario where Leclerc's either he reaches out and gets out of his contract, or you might see him start degrading. His
Yeah.
performances might take a step back, and you might see, and there's a clear contrast between the two. Lewis is all happy, and he's happy to be there. That's what it seems for it, because he's not gone through the trauma that Leclerc has,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's the big difference. And I think it's just why Ferrari finished fourth in this race in Imola, and they were celebrating like they won the race.
I know,
Even
yeah.
even Red Bull in its 400th race did not have as many videos out as Ferrari did, and they finished P4. This was the team that almost won the championship last season, and this was the team that on this very track, Leclerc was on the podium. What were they celebrating? Seriously, what were they celebrating?
I don't know.
What
It's
was the
just
point of the entire? I saw it, and like, what is this team doing? It's the same thing. It's always take two steps forward, then take four back, and then take one step forward and say we've made progress. Like, fuck your progress. That's not progress.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
look, I don't get why everyone's frustrated though, because I was informed by many Hamilton fans last year that this was a serious team. Look, I think I, you know what they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And maybe Leclerc has realized that he's going slightly insane. Yeah, like we've seen this over the years, haven't we, with so many drivers like Alonso, Vettel, Leclerc now. It just breaks drivers, and I think this was the first week. Like, I've seen Leclerc frustrated before, but this was the first weekend where I think he genuinely sounded like, I can't take much more of this. And you're right, it probably is just expectations setting in versus reality, where it's like, okay, we've had the first 4 or 5 races go wrong, but now this is just ridiculous. Like, this is just enough. Um, I still think he would be crazy to leave before 2026 unless. I'll tell you what, I think he's crazy to leave before 2026 unless he can get a seat in a Mercedes or something. Like, if
Aston
he was
Martin.
offers George's seat, yeah, maybe. I
Go
guess.
go go for a new car.
Yeah.
You won't be hurt more
Especially
than
because
you're hurt right now.
I don't know if you heard Newey's comments over the weekend.
Yeah, I did. I saw the interview, and there are people that are slowly looking at Newey, and there are also people that just looked at the upgrade that Aston Martin brought,
Yeah.
and they are both, you can say, the expectations have changed for 2026 when it
Because
comes to Aston
Aston got,
Martin.
like, in fairness, like, they were very unlucky with the VSC and safety car and stuff.
He
Like, you know,
Alonso in a straightforward race finishes P5, P7.
yeah.
He finishes P7,
But he is the unluckiest driver in Formula One history.
as he keeps reminding
As
us.
he keeps telling everyone here. I do hope, as a bit of an Alonso fan, I do really hope that he gets to keep the seat for 26 and Newey
Yeah.
does deliver. But yeah, if Leclerc can go anywhere, you're right. Maybe that is the place to go, unless he can get like a seat at Mercedes, which he just
I
won't
doubt.
get.
Look,
No,
Leclerc
there's
and George are not making
no.
a pick out of the two.
I mean, to be fair, like Leclerc and George in the right car could challenge Verstappen.
Yeah, but Kimi Antonelli, right?
Yeah, but you're right that, like, realistically, the only reason you swap Russell is for Verstappen,
Yeah,
because
that's it.
that's the only upgrade.
Yeah.
Like, because even then, no offense, Verstappen fans, even then, it's not a massive upgrade as much as everyone likes to jump on Russell. Like, Russell is a top tier driver.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that is the only upgrade available in reality.
I think the biggest problem that Leclerc faces right now is, look, it's his prime. This time will not come back. He will be, I think he is 27 or 28 right now. In the next regulations, there is a very, very high probability that whichever team steals the march in 2026, that team is going to dominate for 2026, 27, 28, 29. That's 4 years.
Yeah,
If he's 28 right now, he'll be 32 by the time the next regulation ends.
yeah, that's it, really,
Look,
isn't it?
new talent is coming in.
Yeah,
You are
yeah.
replaceable. And look, Tifosi's passion is amazing, great. Wearing the red, fine, everything is good. But there's only so much you can do with vibes. There has
And
to be more than that.
You know, adding to that as well, like we've been here before where the other problem is, and there's going to potentially be a new world champion this year. You know, like Max has his work cut out to beat
Yeah,
a Piastri, for example. Max is probably the only one on the grid that I would say could do it. Russell as well, maybe, but McLaren or Mercedes would need to bring a substantial upgrade. So let's just put it in perspective that there is a good chance, there's a 50-50 chance at the minute that there will be a new F1 world champion at the end of the year. And we know that, you know, Formula One is very much built on recency bias. So, you know, like next year, if he does wait around, that is the other issue of if he starts looking and it's McLaren and Ferrari not performing, and Aston Martin have the option of, say, it's not a Max Verstappen, but they have an Oscar Piastri, who's the the incumbent
reigning world champion. Yeah,
they're going to just go for the reigning world champion because that's how F1 works. You know, like Jenson Button got a stay of execution. I don't mean to bash on Jenson; he was a good driver, but at the end of 2008, Jenson Button was not getting McLaren seat. You know. That things change very, very quickly, you know. So
exactly. Car matters, and look, it's not only that. The next generation is already there. You have Kimi Antonelli, who's 18 or 19, whatever his age is. Arvid Lindblad will be in Formula One next season, if not this season. By the way,
you've got the new Verstappen on the grid. Well, new Senna. Let's be honest. Let's make it more obvious in Colapinto. Yeah,
his fans are as wonky as
Senna's. Hey,
yeah,
you're speaking to one of them.
You're the more sensible one. So it's just that. Look,
I've got my Colapinto hat on order, by the way, so I'm going to be insufferable.
Oh God!
Yeah.
Hope he survives until then in Alpine. So,
well, with Mexican shipping, it's probably in line with about how good Alpine are in sticking. But Flavio came out and said whoever said that Colapinto had a 5-race contract was wrong, not realizing that it was Flavio. That's you can't make this shit up. It's amazing. So anyway, sorry. He's basically finish off Leclerc.
Just to finish it off, look, next season you have Arvid Lindblad in Formula One, and I won't be surprised if by the year after you have Freddie Slater in Formula One. That's 3 generational talents in Formula One at that time, and they are young and marketable.
Yeah.
All these drivers, these Russells, Russell, Lando, Oscar, and Leclerc, they will lose their sheen if they have not achieved a decent level of success. What made an Alonso, a Vettel, or a Lewis marketable was the fact that they had early career success to back whatever potential that they'd shown. Leclerc right now, in terms of wins, he's just 1 win ahead of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, and that's the tragedy of Formula One, and that's Ferrari for you. That's Ferrari. People's careers.
Because if you said to me, like, you know, if you said to me a few years ago that Leclerc would only have 5 or 6 wins, what is it? 7 wins he has? 6?
Yeah,
7. Is it?
Yeah.
If you said to me, like, in 2019 when he went into that Ferrari that he will have 7 wins by 2025. I would be thinking you're either smoking something or that Ferrari had been banned for cheating with their engine for life or something. Because there's just no
plausible explanation.
Yeah. But there's realistically, with the caliber of Leclerc, like, I can't stress this enough. Like, if you don't think Leclerc is like up there as a, like, if Leclerc was in the Red Bull, for example, if you don't think Leclerc is up there in wins with Verstappen, go back and watch 2022. He's proven over and over again he is a top tier talent. But yeah, you're right. Like, this is the problem with Formula One, which is as soon as you win a championship, you basically have carte blanche to stay around for as long as you want. Right? Yeah. Again, I don't mean to heap on Jenson Button because he was a very good driver.
Jesus fucking Christ, what's wrong with you?
At the end of, I'm sorry, no, he's a very good driver, very nice guy, very likable guy. It's just a perfect example of, at the end of 2008, like, if you told me Jenson Button was staying around until 2016, was it 2017?
Yeah.
Like, if you told me that at the end of 2008, I'd be like, there's no way he's sticking around. Yeah. As soon as you get, like, especially not going to top teams like McLaren was at the time, for example. I know they weren't, you know. For example, that happened. Like, Kimi Räikkönen, because he got the championship in 2007, stuck around just sucking up cash. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? For ages. And like that's, again, I am a huge Raikkonen fan, but like he was putting no effort into it and just stuck around
After
forever.
2016 or 17, he just phoning it in.
He didn't give a shit. Yeah, like he just did not care. And that was brilliant because it was entertaining. But like if he didn't have a world championship, he's gone. Like no one's hiring him for that stage. So like this is the problem that Leclerc and Russell, for example, face, which is the more years you go on without a championship, the less likely you are to stay in the sport, unless you're like a, you know, say a Checo or a Hulkenberg, and you're just willing to kind of sit around in the midfield. Yeah, you're just sitting around going, okay, I'm happy to just be a points driver.
But even Alonso is a two-time world champion.
If Alonso didn't, Alonso would not be getting these big paydays if he hadn't got those two
100%,
championships.
100%.
Like even as good as he is, even if he was the same caliber driver but just didn't have those two championships, he would not be hired by Aston right now. Like just wouldn't be the case.
Without a doubt.
So this is just the way things are in Formula One, that you either have a world championship or you're the new up and coming thing. And you can only be one of those things, you know, for so long. So Leclerc.
Leclerc, please. I mean, just dear Charles Leclerc, if you're watching, as I said at the start of the podcast, it's time. Give Aston Martin a call. Look, and you know, a lot of people talk about, and I will even mention it quite a few times. Lewis was going through something similar in 2012, where he saw the fact that he was stuck. He was also of the same age. I think he was also 27, 28, if I'm not wrong. From that point, he made the call that, okay, now the decision I take, it's going to either make my career better or make it worse, or that's it.
Yeah.
And look, for him, it worked out. But at least he made the call. This stagnation is not going... Ferrari is, if I had to bet my money on it, I don't think they win the title this season, and I don't think they win the title next season. I just do not have any confidence in that team. And it's not because, look, it's not even because that, again, the 17 years of failure. It's also because the vibes are not there.
Honestly, I was just going to say that's one of the issues is like when Honda is not jumping around for joy about how, you know, excited they are for their engine next year. That doesn't concern me because that's not Honda's style, right? Honda have learned from the past not to get excited about their engines. They won't shout about things, you know, especially when they're giving it to Alonso. They know not to talk about their engine too much. But if there was any team on the grid that would be telling everyone how brilliant their engine was, if it was actually brilliant, it is the Italians. Like the Italians would be going, just wait until fucking next year. But they're downplaying it. And if Ferrari are downplaying something, that should be concerning, I suppose. Like, my only concern for Leclerc jumping ship is that there has just been a lot of times in history where someone has jumped ship at the wrong time. And I always am a bit concerned about, like, do you jump ship when you don't know the order? I guess, as you said, Lewis Hamilton is the perfect example of that because Mercedes, sure, there was the right noises, but it wasn't a guarantee, and it did make sense to go. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe he should just go though.
Yeah, and I might look like a complete idiot, which I often do.
When Ferrari wins the title next year.
Yeah. But if it does, look, it will be a great story. But we know, we know it, right?
If Leclerc leaves and Ferrari win the title next year, it'll be a nice story for Behrman in his second season to win the title up against a 7-time world champion. So, you know,
okay. Talking about the 7-time world champion. Okay, what's your... Because, again, I just shared my driver ratings on all social media and a lot of people lost their minds. So, I'll just give you a bit of a brief.
What did you do?
Yeah. So, I'll give you a bit of a brief. Max, I rated 9.5. Leclerc, I rated 9.5. Lewis, I rated 8.5. So, you can imagine where the most of the disgruntled audience came from.
He qualified behind Leclerc. He finished behind Leclerc.
He finished ahead. He finished ahead of Leclerc.
Did he finish ahead of Leclerc?
Yeah.
Oh, I was quite hungover on Monday. Oh, he finished on Sunday. He finished P4, right? Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, then you're an asshole. You're clearly a racist.
Yeah.
No, look, I think it's fair because realistically, Leclerc did a spectacular job in the race, and you could see that by the fact that he jumped so far up when he got that clean air. He was fucked by strategy basically, so I think that is fair. Like
I mean,
Hamilton
he was
staying out
fucked
longer.
he was fucked by the gods, honestly. That's
Yeah,
what
because
it
I mean,
was.
like the only
racing
reason
gods.
Lando was ahead of if Piastri is the same reason that Hamilton is ahead of Oscar. So I
Strategy.
guess if you're a fan right now of Hamilton and you're basically saying he deserves all the credit for that, then I hope that you're reasonable and you say that obviously then Lando was the better racing driver this weekend because those two things are exactly equal.
Yeah.
So
And I didn't rate I didn't rate Lando higher than Oscar either. Pretty
Good.
much for the same reason.
yeah.
And
Well, then you're an equal opportunity racist, and I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
just how one should be. And
Yeah.
I think even if we leave that bit aside, as a Lewis Hamilton fan, and I wrote it in the article as well, that you should be satisfied with how Lewis has progressed. We are no more in the situation where Lewis is half a second off Leclerc.
Yep. No.
We are more or less where he's a couple of tenths off, which is
It's kind of
decent.
yeah. We're like honestly, it's a good thing. Like we're what 6, 7 race. Was this
7
round
races.
6? This was
7 races.
okay. So, I mean, Lewis being that close to Leclerc in qualifying is impressive. Like Leclerc is one of the best qualifiers on the grid, if not the best, if he had the right car. On top of that, Lewis had to make so many changes, and as we've mentioned a few times, he is at the worst team on the grid for being a driver at. So. Yeah, look, I know I
And
bash
we
Lewis
include
Hamilton.
Sauber in the equation, yeah.
But like, I know I bash Lewis Hamilton quite a bit on this podcast, and to be fair, most of that I do because of two things. One, it really pisses people off in the comments, which it just makes me so happy. And because, I just don't read them or I just go in and wind people up. Or, and the other thing is because Lewis said something really, really stupid in Las Vegas last year and I can't let it go because it was so idiotic. And he should know better. But yeah, I think Lewis is doing a really good job, but you shouldn't be pissed off by someone rating Leclerc slightly higher because Leclerc did a better job this weekend. So why wouldn't you rate him higher?
Exactly. Yeah. Even I don't know. Look, honestly, I don't know what's next for Ferrari as such. But I think slowly Lewis finding his feet, I think it's a good thing. Because now they're in a situation where they can actually get the best out of the car from both drivers. Now it's on the team. And as we always say, at Ferrari, drivers are never the problem.
The drivers haven't been the problem at Ferrari for a long time.
Ever. Honestly, ever. They've almost always had a world champion, other than the time when they had Alesi and Berger.
I'm kind of hoping now that
Sorry, they haven't had a world champion since Vettel left either. So,
yeah. No, I'm kind of hoping as well that maybe some Lewis fans give Vettel a little break for 2017 and 2018 now. Because I think
no, they don't.
They won't. But as I said repeatedly, remember we talked about this and people were like, well, if Lewis was at Ferrari, he would have won those seasons. And I kept saying, yeah, but the thing you're not taking into account here is it depends on when Lewis joined. If Lewis joined at the start of 2017, maybe. But if you were there for a year or two before, you're not taking into account how mentally broken you will be by that team. So I think it's all good now. Hamilton doing well. I want to see how frustrated he is by 2026 when he shows up and they've got the 11th best engine on the grid out of 4 engines, and we see what happens. I want to see that stress level when he goes to talk about how bad the engine is, and Ferrari say, "No, Lewis, we do not talk badly about Ferrari. Okay, you tell everyone everything's fine. Everything's good. It's all good here." It's the drivers. They need to drive better. It's the problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, Vassar actually said that. Vassar actually came out after qualifying and said that Ferrari should have qualified in P4 and P5. That went well. So,
but have they broken Fred Vassar as well? Because that's not a very Fred thing to say.
yeah.
That's insane. Yeah. Right, let's talk about more upbeat things. Should we talk about Yuki Tsunoda's crash or Colapinto's crash next?
No. Yeah. Oh, God. Yuki and Colapinto apparently had a lot of things happening off track as well. But yeah, that's for some other way. First of all, I think Yuki needs to buckle up now. I think it's been enough races. This was his 5th race. He scored a point. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even about Hadjar coming in, because what's
That's a
happening
bad idea.
is, yeah, what's happening right now is you have Lindblad who's starting to perform in Formula 2, and you
Yeah.
have Lawson in Formula 1 who is finding it hard to keep up with Hadjar. And Lawson is older of the two drivers, and by older I mean he's only 22,
Yeah.
which is not old in Formula 1 terms, but in Red Bull terms it's ancient. So
Yeah.
there might be a chance, and if I'm not wrong, Lindblad is getting an opportunity to drive a Formula One car soon in a TPC.
I
So
think
once,
so. Yep. Yep.
yeah, so once that starts happening, and if you see him having the pace and performance, next up, it won't be a surprise if Lindblad just replaces Lawson and just jumps to Formula One. And
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
have Hadjar versus Lindblad for a year or so, and the one that impresses Red Bull in whichever way, that one will move to the senior team. I think that's
I
the next succession plan.
I think that what Red Bull will do, and I think it's probably the pragmatic thing to do, is I think no matter what happens, Yuki stays in for this complete season,
Yeah, yeah.
regardless. I think that's obvious.
For the next
I
one, I meant.
also think for the next one, Yuki, we won't know what's happening with Yuki till December, I think, or at least midway through the season, because I think that the simple fact is they need to wait because they can't afford to switch Yuki if there's any chance that Max goes for next year, basically. Because they're going to need like someone who has learned everything from this year, even if he has a bad year, to just have that consistency for next year to like benchmark someone against, basically.
Yeah.
Because if they decide, say in June, they say, hey, look, Yuki's not in next year. We've dropped Yuki. We've not renewed him. And Yuki does sign somewhere else. And then they're like, oh, we're bringing Hadjar up. And then Hadjar falls apart and Max is gone. They're fucked. Like, they're in a really bad place then.
Yeah.
So I could see them holding Yuki as like the insurance policy for next year, basically. Which kind of is pragmatic. It does make sense. But
Yeah.
although I think there's less of a chance of Max going as things stand at the minute now, if Red Bull get their shit together.
There was a chance when the first interview dropped on Friday, if I'm not wrong, where Max kind of said that the next few races are important
Yeah.
for the future of the team. And when he's talking about the future of the team, he's mostly talking about himself.
Of
and
course,
where
like the future of the team doesn't hinge on that at all. Like, the future of him going leans on that,
Exactly. And it's just, I think the race win would have given him a decent boost. Let's see what happens with it. It's very, very tricky. But I think they are slowly setting the succession plans, even in terms of Max in place.
Yeah.
I think they're keeping an eye on Lindblad, and I've been positively surprised because look, I also saw Kimi Antonelli in Formula 2, and he didn't have the best of seasons. Lindblad seems to be a bit more measured in terms of how he's approaching it. There are not too many crashes. He's fast enough now. He's faster than Pepe Marti already. I think he got a podium again. So let's see.
Of
By
course,
the way,
Alex Dunn will be
yeah,
driving
that's what I was
anyway,
about to
so
say. Alex Dunn also won the race.
He's leading the championship at the minute, right?
Yeah, he's at 62 points.
So obviously that's going to be who's coming in now to take Leclerc's seat for next year.
He's a McLaren junior, right?
I know, yeah. He's going to be... So that's basically... Sorry, Lando, but we're going to have an Irish driver fighting Piastri next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Irish booting the Brits. Who would have thought? I mean,
Finally. It only took 800 years.
About time.
Yeah. Let's talk about...
Colapinto. Let's talk about Franco Colapinto and wrap
I've been waiting for this. Yeah.
So what's your view on the brilliant crash?
I mean, look, to be honest, the thing is, here's the situation on that for me in my head, which is, I think perfectly normal because he was dropped in with no testing and all this stuff. And like, at the end of the day, like... Fucking Doohan had an even more ridiculous crash in Suzuka, doing something stupid.
No. This was worse. This was by far the worst crash.
This is nowhere near the worst crash.
This is. This was.
Doohan forgot to turn his DRS off. Would you piss off?
He did not.
Forget about it.
Look,
Here's the thing is, in fairness to Doohan, throughout all of free practice and even in Q1 and coming into Q2, he was only a couple of, like, obviously apart from FP1, but he started to build up and he was only a couple of tenths off Gasly, who's been there for his second season now, gone through testing. He was 2 tenths off Gasly.
You're talking about Colapinto.
Yeah.
He crashed out in Q1.
Q2.
Q1. No, Q1.
He made it to Q2. He started 15th.
He made it to Q2, but it was...
he crashed in Q2.
He crashed in Q1.
Nah, you're talking bollocks. I don't know what you're talking about.
No. He crashed Q1. He made it to Q2 but couldn't really race because he had already crashed.
Yeah, he didn't get knocked out.
Yeah.
But it was on his second run in Q1, so it's not as bad as doing. Look, I think, pace-wise, it was kind of, he's getting his feet together. It's the first weekend. It's the first weekend.
Look, the problem is not that it's the first weekend and everything. The problem is that he came into F1 with a slight
the problem is he has a reputation as a crasher on his head. Yes,
and he should have a reputation of a crasher because in Formula 2 he never crashed. I've never seen him crash.
Also, in fairness, he crashed just as much as Albon during last year as well. So look, it's just if that reputation wasn't there, it's fine. He'll be fine. I think he just needs to be very careful in Monaco.
Enough time. I just hope he's given enough time, and it's not Flavio being a temperamental idiot, because Colapinto should be in Alpine for the rest of the season. Let him slowly get his feet under him. Yeah, just let him understand the car, and he'll be fine. Ideally, what I've seen, I think he should be fine. The problem is he's part of Alpine, and that is never a good thing.
The only thing for me is the way he came back in the race, and even when he was given team orders and stuff, it seemed like in the race it was clearly he had been told, okay, look, during the race, let's just use it as a testing session, just find your feet in the car. Yeah. And that's what it seemed like to me. He wasn't making any crazy moves. He wasn't pushing everything. I feel like it was okay, shit, right, I need to just calm down and find my feet in the car. Look, I think the thing for me is they can... Horner has said this for years. I prefer a driver who crashes a lot, but is fast.
Basically, you can you can curb a fast driver's crashes, but you cannot make a slow driver fast.
And they've been doing this with Kimi Antonelli as well. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe just in that session, he just went too fast. He clipped the grass a little bit and just went off.
Yeah, Mark Hughes also said that maybe we are reaching a point where these cars are too fast for Imola. And the track is too narrow, and that doesn't work, even though the track won't be there next season. But the reason is twofold. Again, it's commercial, but also on the other side, the crashes are a bit too wild.
And look, for anyone who wants to dig in on Colapinto, first of all, at your own regret, this is a Colapinto fanboy podcast now, so be careful. But secondly, the other thing is this shit does happen, and it's not like he was the only person to crash in qualifying as well. Yuki fucking crashed out straight away, and these are experienced drivers, So like you said, this is just par for the course. It's just unfortunate that if Colapinto didn't have those crashes last year and performed the way he did still, no one would be questioning it. It's the guy was fucking just dropped in mid-season without testing. Of course he's going to fucking, But it's because, like you said, it's just unfortunate because of all the noise around it. I think at the end of the day, as long as over the next few races he tones that down, but he does have the difficult situation of he needs to tone that down while also keeping up with Gasly.
Because racing in Monaco.
Yeah, that doesn't help either, does it? So, as long as he gets the win in Monaco, it'll be fine.
Yeah, the worst possible trio of races for driver to jump in. Imola, where you crash, it can bite you. But basically Monaco, where it definitely will bite you, and then finally the race in Barcelona, where almost every driver is as proficient as one can be. So good luck to him on that.
Yeah, fun.
I think
fine.
Yeah, sorry to butt in. I just think that maybe there's an element of Colapinto being pushed in too many directions. I'm not sure you've kept up with the whole thing that the Argentinian fans they're basically assholes. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Hey.
Argentine, you're not Argentinian. I'm not
No,
saying the
no, but
entire
I'm a
South.
Colapinto fanboy now, so I'm
Yeah, so I'm
Argentinian at
talking about
heart.
the Argentinians because look, they specify. So if you don't know, I think it was Yuki who flipped a bird to Colapinto during the free practice,
Yeah.
and the nation of Argentina lost its mind. They went, they went to his, I think it was an Instagram post or something. They were, I think, close to 500,000 comments, and I think almost 90% of them had abuses. And then, just to make sure everyone knows where the comment comes from, an Argentinian flag. So,
Well,
just to
I'd
make
just
sure
like to
everyone
say,
knows.
given the fact that I just put out a video a couple of weeks back where I said Colapinto is great and I got 17,000 followers, I'd just like to say to the country of Argentina, welcome to the podcast. Please
Yeah.
subscribe. we
Yeah. And once that happened, it's I think Colapinto has come out and he said that fans need to be careful. There is
Yeah.
something that's happened, and even today, just before we started recording, Jack Doohan has come out with a status where he's saying that please leave my family alone, stop harassing them. Apparently, I think you also put that out, right? The fake
yeah,
Nick Doohan
yeah.
screenshot. So
I didn't know it was fake because basically someone else had retweeted just
yeah, the
the
Formula
image.
Fakers account, one of the dumbest
Yeah,
accounts
but
in.
someone said it was from Formula Fakers afterwards, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Well, I didn't see it. If I had saw it from
Yeah.
Formula Fakers, I would have known straight away. But
Yeah.
someone else had posted it, obviously
And yeah,
from
apparently
there. So.
his family, his girlfriend, and everyone have been attacked. There have been death threats.
Well,
Apparently,
in
Dune
fairness,
also got death threats
Mick
in
Doohan
Miami.
slandering Gasly didn't help either.
No, who cares? French are not like this, right?
Yeah.
They're good at taking
Also,
off.
he's right to slander Gasly. Gasly is a subpar driver at best.
Yeah.
Actually, at the moment, until Colapinto starts beating Gasly, I'm going to say Gasly is one of the best drivers on the grid.
You should.
And then I'll change.
I was about to say that.
But look,
Anyhow,
I'm just glad this is the only online toxicity we have with Formula One fans. We never see any other fan base be toxic at all. Ever.
just go to my social media post where I put the driver ratings, and you'll see the different kind of toxicity.
I just like to point out I was being sarcastic.
I know. Almost every fan base is upset. And I think
Yeah.
that's the best way to put out a driver
yeah.
rating.
If everyone's annoyed, then you're probably accurate.
Yeah.
It's like they say about the negotiation when you're buying and selling stuff. If both parties are annoyed, you know you made a good deal.
Yeah.
You know. So
Cool. Next up, Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Let's just. How excited are you, by the way?
I love Monaco. But I know not many other people do, but I really enjoy it. And like, it's one of the races where I've just accepted that it's a qualifying special normally. I know we'll talk about the change this week, which could make a difference, but I'm kind of always happy with it just being a qualifying special and just the kind of glitz and glamour of it. And it's like one of those kind of old school Formula One tracks as a part in history where I'm like, even if there was no overtakes and qualifying was boring, I'd be like, no, it's part of the history, fucking keep it. I'm sorry, we can have one. We're allowed one. You know?
Yeah, but we have more than one. That's where the problem comes.
Yeah, and they're slowly removing them. Last Imola, it's fine. It's gone.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's just talk a bit about the format that will be there this time around. I think for me, that's the most interesting bit because at least it adds a variable to a very, very, honestly, a dull race.
Can I just ask, do you know what is the deal with, for example, right? They have to change twice.
Yeah.
If there's a red flag, does that count as a change?
No.
No. So they have
Sorry, it counts as a change. It still counts as a change, but at least there will be two different. But again,
So if there's two red
that can fuck
flags.
things up, right? That can fuck things up.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, if there are two red flags, then anyway, you're you're in for a bad time. At least in Monaco. I mean, that's what made the race last season pretty much pathetic because we not only had that.
And do they have to use all three compounds?
Yep, this time around you have to use all three
Okay, so
compounds.
they'll have to use the C6, the C4, and the C3 or whatever.
Yeah. So we won't see, at least we won't see them dawdling around for what 80, 90, whatever, 70 laps this time around. So they'll have to space it out. How they do it is actually an interesting bit. Because again, even if the tires don't degrade or whatever, they still each will be used in a different manner. So which team comes out on top, it will a lot will depend on how strategically they measure these things.
Yeah.
But let's see. At least on that front, at least there's something to look forward to. Because otherwise, the race on track, it's not going to be much. It never is. What's your expectation in terms of the pecking order?
I kind of agree with what you said earlier. I do think mainly because it's low speed traction zones. I think this is going to be a McLaren, like a dominant McLaren place. Of course, overtaking's hard. So if McLaren fuck up in qualifying, which I mean does happen, we could end up with Hamilton winning Monaco because we know he's a Hamilton. Oh, did I say he was a qualifying specialist? No, I didn't. Sorry, I meant Leclerc. That's who I meant. I meant Leclerc. Leclerc could win. No, I'm going to say it's going to be McLaren. Then, do I put Mercedes or Ferrari? I think in terms of just car pace, I think Ferrari might do well here. I think Red Bull's going to be the slower one this week. I think it's going to be like a Bahrain for them. So I'm going to say it's going to be McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull. However, I don't want to take out the fact that I am expecting Ferrari to fuck up this 6 ways from Sunday. So they may be second fastest in car pace, but still finish P19 and P20 somehow.
Yeah, of course, they have 2 opportunities to do it in the race, right? There are 2 pit stops. So, double. I'm not...
They'll probably forget they have to use all 3 compounds. They'll go hard, medium, and then Leclerc will be shouting like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I'll put that in my bingo card. Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure that McLaren would be the dominant one or would be an outright fastest. I think it's going to be a very, very, very close toss-up between McLaren, Mercedes, and I don't know where Ferrari and Red Bull are going to be. I'm not entirely sure. It's just they as I said, the Red Bull's problems is twofold. First is that its key advantage, which is the fast speed sections, there aren't any at Monaco, and secondly, the other problem is that Red Bull is not the best car over the curbs, and that plays a big role in Monaco, and that hurt them last time around as well. When, if you remember, I think Max was P5 or P6 something. So yeah, that's where I won't be surprised if we have a George Russell win.
No, neither would I.
Yeah.
I think it's I think the Mercedes is relatively close. It's just in hot temperature it seems to fall apart. In cold temperature they're not sure whether it works or not. So there's there's still that inconsistency with Mercedes where they're kind of not really sure where it is.
Yeah.
But this could be a track that suits it. We'll see.
Exactly.
So what do you think in terms of top 3?
Predictions. Yeah, I'll go with a George Russell win, Oscar Piastri P2, and just for the vibes, Leclerc P3. Although I'll be very surprised if he gets on the podium.
Who won Monaco last year? Was it Lando? It was Leclerc. Oh, of course.
The only good thing about
it was Monza
a very forgettable race
and Monaco. Yeah. I forgot about that. Okay, so you're going George, Oscar, Lando?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go Colapinto. No. I'm going to say... I wanted to do George. I can't now. I'm going to say...
Antonelli.
No.
He wasn't that good last season as well. Monaco.
Yeah. I'm going to go... Oh, fuck. Screw it. Let's go it. I'm going to go Leclerc, George, Lando.
Yeah, the head-to-head at Monaco between Oscar and Lando is...
No.
It's 2-0 Oscar, both.
Right, okay. Well, that was a bad prediction from me then, wasn't it? But sure, we'll see. Yeah. Although my prediction was almost correct this weekend.
Yeah. You made sure to remind everyone about it.
Yeah. It was almost correct. Unfortunately, they just didn't crash at the first turn.
Exactly.
But, right. Let's jump into questions.
Yep. Let's jump to the questions. Let's get to them.
Do you want to take the YouTube ones? I'll check the X ones, or the other way around?
Yep.
Cool.
Let's do that.
So I've got the X ones here in front of me. I'll kick off, and we'll just jump back and forth between us. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have many on X apparently. We have
4 on X.
Yeah, and we have one. We have one question on YouTube. So yeah.
I'll then go with the one on YouTube if you want first to get that.
No, go for it.
Okay, right. So this was one from DRS Merchant who says history shows that the driver who wins the or wins Imola wins the WDC, which we did.
No, it doesn't.
I did respond to him on this because I was like, it doesn't actually, because you've got Fernando Alonso, or sorry, Michael Schumacher 2006.
Yeah.
Ralf Schumacher won 2001. 1997 was Hans Harald Frentzen. 1995, I think Damon Hill won.
Yeah.
So,
and he didn't win the championship, so
exactly, yeah. So it doesn't add up. But the main question was, is Max the favorite once again? Now, we've kind of covered this to an extent, but I would say I don't think Max is the outright favorite. I still think it's Oscar, and the only reason I think that is because I think that the McLaren will be faster at more tracks than the Red Bull will be. However, I will say that Max now has way more of a chance of winning it than I would have said he has before Imola, if that makes sense. Like, basically, I have way more confidence that Max could win this championship now than I would have had before, because even with Max's brilliance, I thought there was going to be more of those kind of tire deg specials on top of the fact that we would have kind of rear limited tracks like Bahrain throughout the season as well. However, it now seems like there's only one of those issues to deal with, if that makes sense. So I don't think Max is the favorite. I still think that's Oscar, because I still think there'll be more tracks where the McLaren is better. But I think it's very, very close. Like, it's not like an outside chance of winning like it was before. I think he's properly in the fight now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So my key takeaway from Imola was not that Max is now the outright favorite. I think for me the biggest takeaway was that the top two contenders are Max and Oscar now.
Yeah.
Lando is trailing at this stage because he's yet to outright beat Oscar, and until he does that and builds some momentum, it's very hard to just give him that kind of leeway that we've done for a long time now.
I mean, this is one of those tracks where, honestly, like, if I was expecting Lando to go well anywhere, I thought it would have been here. So the fact that he wasn't on
Daniel,
just everything here. He like, even when he was in a midfield car, he was finishing on the podium at this track. So like, I just think the fact that he hasn't gone well here, like, unless something dramatically changes in the next 3 or 4 races where he clicks and he starts like beating Oscar in qualifying every weekend, Lando is just not, like, Lando is the outside favorite, if anything. He's
like the outsider in the title battle right now. Yeah.
So I think it's still Oscar is the favorite to win, because I think Oscar gets the Max out of the car quite a bit now as well.
Yeah.
As Max does. But I think that the thing is, to put it simply, I think Oscar is still the favorite, but Max is no longer the outside favorite. He is just like right there, kind of second favorite, basically. But that could change very quickly, because all it'll take is one more upgrade from Red Bull, and if they have cars that are like on par with each other,
Max
is the favorite. I don't know if he walks it. I still think if they're on par, I still think Oscar fights him down to 1 or 2 races at the end.
Oscar does. Look, Oscar does.
Max
Oscar will fight him. Yeah, the problem that happens is, in terms of operations and everything, Red Bull tends to nail everything, but McLaren is
that's the thing, isn't it? Because Max won't leave an inch, and Red Bull are far more battle hardened than McLaren are.
Yeah,
that's where it just everything works against Oscar. Then at that point,
even this weekend, right, when Oscar pitted, even I tweeted it as well, that I think Max and Lando are not going to follow Oscar into the pits, because there's just a 4 seconds gap between Oscar and the guy in front. He's going to be stuck in traffic, and they still pulled the pin. So these are the small moments where a team like Red Bull wins. So this could change very quickly. But as it stands, I think we both agree he's not the favorite, but he's now Lando. And Lando is the outside favorite now, basically. Precisely.
So interesting. Okay, what's the one from YouTube, and then I'll jump to the next one.
Okay, so on YouTube we have Flaky. So he has, on a scale of 9 to Ferrari, how were McLaren in their strategy for also not putting softs on Piastri at the end, even if it cost a position under the safety car? Also, not really a question, but how is it that for years we hear the C5 is a shit race tire which does not last more than 7 to 10 laps, and yet they drove 30 laps on it without much pace lost? All these supposed smart people in F1 really aren't that smart. Then if they all got it wrong. Yeah.
The problem is those
So,
smart people aren't at F1; they're at Pirelli, which well, is
yeah.
unfortunate. Pirelli is French or Italian, right?
Yeah.
There's your problem. Um,
So first bit, the strategy. So I think we touched on it a bit. I think he's specifically talking about why Piastri was not pitted for a soft set.
soft, yeah.
Yeah. So the reason why it was not done is because Oscar made the call. Oscar was adamant
That
that
literally was what it was, yeah. Oscar
Yeah.
made the call not to come in. He wanted to stay out and
exactly.
fight
He
Max.
said,
Yeah.
so it was on him. Either he could have gone on a fresh soft tire, if I'm not wrong. So either he could have done that, and you don't know how many laps that particular tire would last.
Yeah.
On the contrary, the option was he would have just stayed out on the 15 lap old hards, and he did that. So
In
that's
hindsight, given there
Yeah.
was only a few laps left, probably would have been a good decision. But yeah,
no,
I mean,
no, I doubt it.
You don't think so?
The hard tire couldn't last an entire lap in qualifying. How was it going to do that in the
the
race?
soft, you mean?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
The soft, the red wall tires.
Yeah, although I don't think he had this. Yeah, you're right. I don't know.
Because
Maybe
look,
not.
in qualifying, they basically ran empty cars when one push lap on a red wall tire, and the tire would not last an entire lap.
Yeah,
Because
that's true.
basically
Yeah,
the medium,
so,
the mediums were faster. To be honest, Alonso getting P5 was down to him choosing the mediums. So
Yeah.
once you're able to do that, it was just out of discussion.
yeah.
Now the second bit that we've heard a lot, that C5 is a shit race tire. So there's one thing here. Last season on this very track, if I'm not wrong, they ran the C5 tire in the race.
Yeah, I believe
Isn't it?
so. Yeah, I
It
believe
was
so. Yeah.
it was a soft version, and the C4 was the medium version. So I think they went
One
medium
step
and
softer.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's your answer. And also this season, the teams have also progressed in terms of
This
tire management and everything. So they tend to keep the tires alive a lot more.
this
than
this is the
used to.
problem, isn't it? For like, I guess this is the issue with that Pirelli are up against. To give them some credit, is that
They made racing great again.
yeah. This is the problem though that they face, which is like, even if we look at like for example, year to year, I can't remember which season it is, but essentially they were like, oh, in the last season they're not going to be able to put more more downforce on this, and somehow the F1 engineers figured out ways to get like 20% more downforce out of cars. The problem is that I think in reality is like you're just up against F1 engineers who, once they figure out kind of the rough degradation of these cars,
Yeah.
they can just find ways to extract more out of the tires. And like to a point where even like Red Bull and everyone else is like, oh, McLaren must be cheating. This can't be possible. Like that's the level of engineering that you're seeing from these guys. And like everyone thinks, oh, well, it must be some special trick, where it's like, no, this is just very clever engineering across the board. So I think that Pirelli are up against it. I just think the only option really is either to start stepping them to give kind of different
this race
options.
was a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Them going one step softer. It brought in different strategic variables both in qualifying and in the race. Plus, you also had, I think this is the most legitimate overtaking at Imola that I've seen in these regulations. I don't
Yeah.
think we've seen this kind of legitimate overtaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it was entirely down to the fact that there were teams that were forced to do different strategies, and it opened different variables which ultimately fit into different boxes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
I mean look, if this had not worked this weekend, Pirelli and Formula One was in for a long season, because then you would have shit races. There was no other option. If the softest tire does not work at Imola, then you're done. So
Yeah.
kudos to them. They've done a I'd say good job.
I think also the other thing is we need to see at more races how this C6 goes as well, because this C6 wasn't made for this track; it was made for Monaco and various other tracks. So we kind of need to see how it goes at other tracks. But yeah,
it will be at Canada as well. So
so we'll see.
Next up,
look, I'm up for bashing Pirelli, but I think unfortunately they're just up against F1 engineers.
Yeah,
maybe it is time to bring in either multiple tires or multiple tire suppliers once again.
No, that doesn't work.
Let Alonso win a championship once again.
That I'm in favor of.
Toro de Corsa says, why was George pissed off with Piastri at the start? Maybe he wanted Piastri and Max to go for broke so he can mug them both, or was Piastri napping there? Either way, the Merc didn't have the pace and they needed to change that. So yeah, the last part, that last part, I agree with. I don't think there's much more to say on it. Like, Merc just didn't have the pace this weekend regardless. As for why was George pissed off, I think it was just a case of Piastri was... I think that basically George was expecting Piastri to be looking for Max, and George was basically hoping... I
think George knew what was coming.
Yeah. But also...
George could see that the way Piastri was boxing him down the inside, he left the outside open and the door was open for Max.
But that's what I mean. I think that's why he was pissed off, though, because he probably thought...
Rookie move.
But he probably also was hoping that essentially that he knew Max would try something like that. He was hoping that Piastri would lunge to cover Max, which would give him a space to come through and take the lead. And I think he was actually just annoyed it didn't work out to his advantage. And then because Max went around the outside and took him by surprise, he got boxed in and had nowhere to go. So Piastri was actually doing the right thing if he was looking to close off Russell.
I think it was a bit too defensive, if I'm being honest, because it did appear that if you see George's on board, you can see that Piastri's sole focus is on George. It's not on Max, which is a bit weird, but you could also make sense because George was the one who had the best start, and he was basically right on the heels of Oscar. But it seemed that Oscar was a bit too preoccupied with George, and George could literally see what was going to happen, and it did. The door was open and Max just went through. So maybe a bit of that, but understandable. Next.
Yeah, I think that's it. Coffeehead says, do you agree Alonso is the unluckiest driver of all time?
No. Nico Hülkenberg.
I don't.
Nico Hülkenberg.
Yes. Yeah. Also, the problem for me with Alonso, I get where he's coming from, that he has, especially when you look at the teams he's jumped from and they've gone on to win and stuff like that. Yeah. However, I will just say, I don't know if that's unlucky or just burning bridges, which he's done a lot.
Making the worst call almost
decisions.
Every time.
Yeah. So I don't think he's unlucky as much as he just, he brings some of this along himself.
Yeah.
But so no, I don't think he's the unluckiest driver of all time.
No.
But he did get some bad luck this weekend, to be fair.
I mean, if we are going to talk about the unluckiest driver, then the two championships that he won. The first was won because Kimi Raikkonen's car, almost every third race it blew up. For one reason or the other. And then in the next season in 2006 when he won, it was Michael Schumacher's late season DNF in Japan, when Michael was basically cruising to the championship. So once that happens, look, you've also won two championships with luck. So it evens out. But somewhere, look, you make your own luck as well. And if next season he has, fingers crossed, if he has the car to fight for the championship, that's Alonso making his own luck.
Yeah. Coffeehead has a couple more here, so we'll just bash through these.
Is McLaren even trying to win the Drivers' Championship?
No. The simple answer to that is no. Did McLaren basically admit this themselves? Because they, even when you're looking at tire strategy there, if they're trying to win the Drivers' Championship, they're forcing Oscar to make whatever call they think is best for Oscar to win, for example. But instead, they're just letting Oscar choose, because they're like, no, it's fine. Our drivers are in second and third. That's enough for us to outscore Red Bull, so we're fine here. So guys, do whatever you want now. It's on you. They're just basically leaving the drivers to do whatever they want.
I think there's also a bit of what's the word for it? Complacency, which I hear from Stella, where He thinks that McLaren has such a decent advantage that at the end of the day, it's going to come down between the two drivers, and then one of them can pick the championship.
Yeah.
But I think what happened this weekend is maybe going to turn a few heads, because by mid-season, if Max is within touching distance or has maybe even overtook the two and taken over the championship lead, I think McLaren would be forced to rethink their approach, because it looks foolish when you're winning a constructors championship but you're not maximizing for the drivers
The
championship.
drivers. Yeah.
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 So yeah.
And McLaren have been here before, haven't they? But the other way around. The other way around
Yeah.
as well.
I mean,
yeah.
they were here last season as well. To be honest, they
No, but I mean, like 2007.
Yeah.
They and 2008, right? They lost the constructors both years
2008. Yeah, they lost the constructors.
to Ferrari, right? And 2007 they were banned. 1999 they lost the constructors, won the drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
had a fair
they've
share
been
of
here a few times, but the other way around and stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Does this race change your perspective with Imola as a circuit? Honestly, no. Like I love Imola, but the problem for me is, and I will say a sentence that irks me, because the thing is, Formula One has outgrown Imola, but that is not the fault of Imola. That is the fault of Formula One. Like Formula One has made cars that can't race each other in dirty air and that are too big and too cumbersome. So that is it's not on Imola, it's on Formula One. But yeah, I think unfortunately, like we're only going to be allowed to keep, because unfortunately this is a commercial sport, we're only going to be allowed to keep a certain amount of old school tracks that are just there for kind of the old schoolness. And we have Monaco, we have Spa, which unfortunately is going to probably be fucking cycled, isn't it? Soon. Have we got any other old school tracks now? Monza, yeah. Honestly, I'd
Maybe
give
Hungary.
Imola over Monza.
No. I'd take Imola over. I'd take Monza over Imola any day.
Monza is the biggest
360.
DRS train.
Yeah, but I don't know. Monza has a more sentimental value for me in terms of the Tifosi.
Yeah, that's fair.
What look, 2008 when Vettel won, that was the kind of
Yes,
crowd.
okay.
Or last
Yeah,
season as
fair
well.
enough. Yeah,
when Leclerc
fair enough.
won. So
Okay.
yeah, they have that.
There's two more here, but they're not to do with F1. So I'm going to let you answer these. Thoughts on Indy
go for it.
Pole?
Okay,
Spectacular,
thoughts on-
right?
Yeah, spectacular.
I didn't watch it. I just saw some people talk about it.
I kind of covered it for the website. So
Who was it, Schwartzman?
yes, Robert Schwartzman, who is
In Prema?
in Prema. So how should I put it? It's basically, in F1 terms, it is which driver should we pick? Which driver?
Is this not basically, though, just basically F2 saying, look, we're better than you, IndyCar?
No.
Because you've sent an F2 driver, essentially, in an F2 team to IndyCar, and they've won.
No, they've not won. They just got pole. So
It's basically winning, isn't it?
No. They're not going to win them. It's hardly any chance. So it's the equivalent would be if a driver from Formula 2, not Formula 2, from IndyCar, be it, let's say, Colton Herta, he comes into Formula 1 with Cadillac next season,
And wins.
assuming.
Yeah.
Not wins. He secures
pole.
pole position for Monaco.
Yeah, but that would never happen because Formula One is far better than IndyCar.
Exactly.
Moving on.
And look, poor Schwartzman gets a lot of flack for, well, being an Israeli-born, Russian-raised. I mean, basically the two worst countries that one could pick in this day and age.
It's not apolitical.
Yeah. Anyways, will you cover the 24 hours of Le Mans?
Rob, what? Maybe?
I mean, we'll probably know who's going to win by...
Yeah.
We'll know by the free practice. The problem with VEC is you know who's going to win very, very early. So makes
Well,
it a bit
let's. I've got. Well, I think that answers itself because I've got 5 minutes left, and this one may take all of that because this
Which one
one's.
is?
This
Do
is
you
from
guys-
Sushi. Do you guys think that Verstappen is significantly better than Leclerc in terms of overall package? And please explain in terms of racecraft and qualifying.
You go first.
I will say I have a problem with the word significant here.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to upset a lot of people because there are certain people who listen to this podcast who for some reason think that Verstappen would be 2 to 3 tenths faster than George Russell in the Mercedes, like all the time. And I'm just like, no, I'm sorry, but no. The thing is, do I think that Verstappen is a more complete and better package than Leclerc? Yes.
Yes.
Do I think it's significant? No. And that is not to bash either of them. The thing is, with these top 5 drivers, I think that people think like, okay, between the top like 3, 4 drivers, one of them is like, a million times better. It's like, no. Where Verstappen is better is at the fine margins, and everything in Formula One at the top is fine margins. Yeah. So like, Leclerc, even if you're going like George to Verstappen in qualifying, I would say there's probably a tenth, maybe less between them, but that is enough for Verstappen to completely like whitewash George over the course of a championship.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about it, it's just like significant is a difficult word in Formula One because no, I don't think so. And to be honest, the other thing for me is I do think that Verstappen has the edge over Leclerc in racecraft. I think he's a more aggressive driver at points. No. However, we saw in 2022 that the difference between the two of them is absolutely minuscule. And I think that where Leclerc has Verstappen beat is I think that Leclerc is still a better qualifier than Verstappen, to be honest. In one lap pace, I think Leclerc is faster. And that's named by the fact that, look, at the end of the day, in 2023, with a 2-cent advantage in qualifying, Verstappen didn't win every weekend in qualifying. So I don't think Verstappen's a qualifying specialist. He's an overall specialist, But
I think the only advantage Max has over Leclerc is wet weather racing. I think he beats. I think he beats him there almost every time. Other than that, I think between Leclerc and Max, I think it's very hard to choose. If we are fortunate enough to have a battle between Max and Leclerc in similarly paced cars, I think the quality of that battle is going to be better than what we saw in 2021. And I'm not even kidding.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Look, we saw in 2022 when they had close
on
cars.
Lewis or any such thing. Let me make it clear because everyone loves taking things a bit too personal. It's just that these two drivers right now, the level at which they're operating, I'd say they are pretty much head and shoulders above everyone else when everything is aligned. If the car and the team is working perfectly, I don't think there's anyone on the Formula One grid right now that touches Max or Leclerc. Yeah, that's just my view, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that just to go back to what I said though is like if you had everyone if this was a spec series and they were all in the exact same cars essentially, and let's imagine because the other thing is not just the cars, like let's imagine all the teams were operating like on the same level of strategy and so on. I think it would be, as you said, Verstappen and Leclerc fighting each other for a title, and I think it would be very close. I personally think Verstappen would win it just on the basis of I think there's certain things that like the absolute upper level of ruthlessness. But I do think if you were to go head to head and look at the qualifying over the season, I think Leclerc beats Verstappen on qualifying over the season, for example. So I think it would ebb and flow. But I think that the other thing is, I think that George Russell, like an Oscar Piastri, I think they'd be very close. And I think that's where everyone's like, oh, well, like if you put, Russell and Verstappen alongside.
Even by the way, Lewis and Alonso, not to forget them, because they are part of this elite group that Formula One has right now.
You just lose stuff with age a little bit, and that's where I think the problem would come even for Alonso. Like,
for sure.
So
I think we're going to find out where Alonso is in 2026 if he gets a good enough car.
Yeah.
Right now,
because that's going to be a lot of work for him as well to adapt to a new season. But so I do think Verstappen would win over the course of a season, but anyone who says significant, I'm just like, I just don't agree with that. I just think like even the difference between Verstappen and Russell isn't significant, but it is the fine margins that win championships, so
I agree.
That one, that.
And on that note, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. Drop a comment, like the video. Make your family subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have them on board as well. Don't show if they're too sensitive, don't show them. Other than that, thanks. We'll catch you after Monaco?
I'll just finish to make sure we get a lot more subscribers. Muchas gracias por los fans de Colapinto. Espero toda la gente de Argentina es bien y seguro Colapinto va a ganar in Monaco. That should do it. We should get about 400,000 subscribers now.
Yeah. And if we don't,
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, it's on you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
watching. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.